Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the third and final season of Future Man. I'm going to let you know ahead of time, I'm jumping straight into spoilers, so if you've not seen all of season 3 of Future Man, do not listen to this because I will spoil it for you. You have been warned. Okay, so in general, how did I feel about this season? It was a great season, a great and beautiful way to send off the series. It went in many different directions I wasn't expecting because I didn't watch the trailer because I literally just caught up with the show like earlier this week. So I didn't watch the trailer, so I went into this not knowing what to expect, especially because like I thought that the decathlon would have been much bigger storyline than it was. It was like, no, after the first episode we were done with, I was like, that's so interesting. I thought that was going to be like the main overarching thing of season 3, but it's like, nah, it started there and it just went off. But let's just kind of, break it down. I love that whole decathlon situation just because it's like everything that Josh went through, because it's so effed up that, because even Josh is like, it's like, no, they're like, because even the voices out of his head, which I was like, oh, where are we going with that? We'll get to that soon enough. But the fact is, it's like, you basically don't need Wolf and Tiger, but he's like, no. It's like that's kind of our thing. It's sad because over and over again, Josh will defend how much they treat him like shit. Even I'm like, after everything that you've been through, all the times like they kind of treat you like shit, and then it's like, oh, your relationship gets repaired, and then they immediately kind of treat you like shit afterwards. I'm like, come on, that's a really messed up dynamic. I was like, what's and so it's and then because I'm like, at any point in time, they've lost their memories. At no point did they believe Josh and just go with the flow of what he wanted to do. Hell, he literally died. Well, not died, but got super hurt. What was that? Because it was like 60 attempts with that whole decathlon. So it was like 60 days of like, well, it was 60 challenges essentially. It's how I should have been trying to phrase that. But it's like at no point did they actually try to defend Josh. So he got hurt every time. And literally at one point he was like, I literally had to teach myself how to walk. This is the 5th time I've had to teach myself how to walk again. The people's got those signs out there. Someone was like, why don't you, there was literally a sign that was like, why don't you stand behind Wolf or Tiger? I love that. But it was even kind of messed up, even like, the mythical creatures they were killing. Like the fact is Tiger ended up killing like a unicorn, and you're like, oh, that's brutal. But nevertheless, I love that whole situation, especially finding out about Susan's situation of like his daughter Stanley and his wife Randall. I love that whole thing of like have different teeth for different things, and it was time for sex, and he's adjusting her, and she's like belittling him. He's like, what the hell is up with this? Oh, I put you in the wrong setting, and he had it set to what was it, in case during a thunderstorm, and it completely changed Randall's mood and everything. I love that whole thing, which was also that twisted thing of like, oh, let's put Stanley into sleep mode, and it's weird because it's like you have her as a cube and you're putting a little napkin over her. It's like, okay, that's weird but also adorable, but at the same time it's like you're about to bang your robot wife in front of your robot daughter, even though she's in that cube form. I still think she's cognizant enough. It's just a weird situation. But luckily, when it was all said and done, Josh is listening to the voice and is able to escape. And then I love, they're like, wow, how are you? And I love Wolf being like, when'd you get kind of hot? And then Tiger being like, how are you able to kind of figure this out in one day? He's like, fuck you guys. Because it was just like, it's like, don't belittle this. It's just being like one day. It's like, once again, you guys still aren't listening to me. I even love that, like listening to the voice, he kind of manipulated Tiger. It's like, if they needed, was it like a mermaid, something from a mermaid? And it's like, oh, I mean, I shouldn't even brought it up because you couldn't get it in the first place. But luckily they managed to escape. And I love they meet because of their escape. Someone else kind of comes up to kind of take over because Susan's trying to track them down and everything. And it's Marshall Mathers. The moment that it's like, she's like, look at my position. She's like, Marshall Mathers. I was like, shut up. I love it. That actress was Yvette from Kevin Probably Saves the World is kind of the thing. I've seen her in something else more recently, but I can't remember what it was because I remember referencing the fact that I know her as Yvette from Kevin Probably Saves the World. There was something else I saw recently with her in it, but regardless, she kind of took over operations, and it's interesting too because that's a part of the season and stuff like that, but it's only part way there because I mean they kind of get away from like the future stuff for a while anyway. I even love that little tidbits and jokes about like the fact is she's one of the few people in that high ranking position that was born vaginally, because everyone else kind of comes out as a full grown adult. She was born like, like most people are. And I guess it's like, he's like, oh, she's like, yeah, because I was born out of vagina. He's like, oh, because she basically criticized like the way, and he's like, oh, you mean the way I was born, what is the social norm of this time? Nevertheless, though, I am kind of bummed we didn't get to spend more time in those other time periods, whether it be like, France, Japan, and then Russia. Like Russia's the one you end up spending the most time in. They don't spend that much time in Japan that long, but it's just like, I wish we could have gotten more time with those. It's because it's interesting because this season's only 8 episodes, whereas all the other seasons were 13. So probably if the season was a little longer, probably would have got more time with those. But regardless, I also love they make note of it's like, oh my God, we can move across time and space now. That's so, that's new and fresh. And I'm like, right, because I forgot for a second. I was like, right, you guys only travel across time, you never travel across space, because you always travel in time at the exact same spot you're in. So you never, I was like, right, that is kind of new for this show. So I thought that was interesting. Even them staying in Russia for a longer period of time, the whole thing between Wolf and that Russian lady, was it Dasha? And I love that. It's like, oh, I love like after her and Wolf banged, she was saying like that very poetic thing, and Wolf is like, I don't know what I actually have no idea what, but you want me to eat, well, I think he said, you want me to eat the ass again? And she's like, duh. And I'm like, what, dude? That's crazy. And I also love that he gave Josh back his shirt and was soaking wet. I love that we immediately kind of set up the fact is that Wolf is a little, not Wolf, but Tiger is like slowly but surely we are seeing her more and more as a killing machine later on. Interesting term, I know. But the fact is that because it's like she wanted, like the moment she heard, because Josh loved this time because it's like, oh, this is actually something I'm good at. She's like, yeah, that shows you how much this time sucks at. The fact is there's actually something here that you can actually do. Also just shows you how ignorant Josh is, because he's like, oh, we must be in Kansas. Now we're super in Russia, because he was thinking this was like during the Civil War. He's like, I got the war part right. I mean, granted, it's Russia, World War One, but he had started listing off all the terrible stuff and about World War One. It's like, and then like I'm surprised Josh didn't pick up on it, but the fact is that Tiger, like you could tell she was super into the concept of like, oh man, tell me all about this war and stuff like that. But I even love that Josh, like, he's like, yeah, the only reason why I know so much about the war is because of the movie War Horse, because that's why he kept coming at it from the perspective of horses, because even Wolf was like, why do you keep bringing up horses and stuff like that? So I love that being a little aspect to it. And I almost halfway expected us to see a segment of the episode with her actually going off a war, but basically she just kicks the ass of everyone that was all those everyone at the recruitment thing laughing at her. And I love that when it was time to kill the killing machine, she's like, oh crap, I ran out of bullets. I guess I shouldn't have shot that old man and the young boy, but they were laughing at me, Wolf. They were laughing at me. So they kind of had to go, I'm like, Jesus. But nevertheless, I did like what they did with the killing machine, because it's like the killing machine is basically an amalgamation of everyone that was from the 300, the real event, except they didn't count the Hunchback, because it's like you didn't really have anything. So it was really just 299 built into the killing machine. I just thought that was kind of a neat little, I was like, oh, so we're kind of going a little Terminator-ish in this regard. I was like, okay, I could be down for that, And even then, it shows up and it kind of does its thing, but it's not there. That it pops up here and there, but it's very not in the final season as much. But I also love that literally the entire time this is all going down, there's literally the whole big suck situation that's happening in the background where it's like time is overlapping, which me being the nerd I am, I'm like, yo, like our trio has literally gone, they are legends of tomorrowing. I'm trying to say this, legends of tomorrowing this up super good. If you don't know if you never watched Legends of Tomorrow, basically they do this on a regular basis, or they kind of fuck up time so much and badly. So it's very similar. Theirs is probably worse because they brought up all the listing. I mean, obviously season 2's finale brought up all the terrible stuff that's a byproduct of them messing with time. It's like, oh, you thought you're doing good? You did a lot of terrible things. A whole bunch of people died and stuff like that. So the next time they end up in what was like the 1600s. And Josh, I love that whole thing that they get surrounded, and Josh is like, does that thing with his hands, and then he just kind of walks away. I was like, what the fuck is that? And then Tiger and Wolf do it, and they just keep walking. I'm like, oh, what does that even mean? And Josh is kind of feeling full of himself. He's feeling good. He's like, it's like I have faith. He's like, I know exactly where I'm going. I know that everything's going to work out. And it immediately steps in a bear trap. I'm like, that's messed up. Josh had his one moment of like, yeah, it was like a what the fuck moment, but he had a cool moment of like, oh, Josh has got it all figured out. And in that moment, it just all goes to shit. Then we get like 6 months later that they've been there. The fact is, his leg is messed up, and the voice inside his head, which he's thinking is God, is telling him to go up the mountain. But he's like, the more I try, the more wound I get. You have Wolf kind of trying to do his culinary thing, and he's being kept at a distance from people because Tiger doesn't want to take the chance that he might bang someone, because it's like basically he laid it down so damn good that the fact is that Dasha wrote a novel about him, and one of the Time Cop people read the book, and I thought that was such an interesting aspect, because it's like it's very high tech and low tech. That basically it's like, oh, they're constantly watching changes to history, and it's like, oh, sliced bread got created 700 years before it was supposed to. Oh, I'm reading this sex novel. They bring up some guy named Wolf, and it's like, I love that actually being the means of how they're tracking them down across. So I don't know. I just thought that's kind of a neat, like I said, high and low tech, angle to the whole situation. Earlier, I had brought up the fact is that Tiger was a little like more killy this season. I love that even Wolf kind of calls her out for it, because it's like, you're kind of enjoying this. He's like, you weren't always nice, but it almost just seems like you were gun. Like, because before she at least killed with a purpose of like, oh, this is all for the future and stuff like that. But for her, it's just she kind of lost all that, because it's like, we now know like the ramifications of what we've done trying to save the future. We've literally killed billions of lives. So it's like, and now she just kind of enjoys the hunt. She was hunting down Whitey, that bear. At the same time, Wolf was trying to set up like that agreement between all the different groups, and they're like, oh, you have to sign it. He's like, actually, I don't want to sign it, because I kind of even love like he tried making up excuses of like, I've kind of helped out here with trade agreements and stuff like that, but the fact is I've kept my name off of stuff so that the Time Cops don't find us. But he's like, yeah, there's a wolf symbol, yeah, but to be fair, it's like wolves were used as a lot of symbols here. There's even that lady that kind of helps Josh with his breakthrough, because he's like, oh yeah, I've been hearing his voice, and trying to make him realize like, oh, it wasn't real. But then like Wolf shitting on all that by being like, oh, you can never go home, because the Time Cops are most likely waiting there. If they haven't already killed your parents and replaced them with robots, you'd most likely have to kill Josh Futterman from that timeline and kind of replace him. So pretty much basically Josh had some form of hope, and in that moment, like, that hope was completely ripped away from him by Wolf, so I thought that was interesting. I even love him be like, when Tiger comes back, tell her I bought a mirror. It's like, you bought a mirror? It's like, it won't make much sense to you because you weren't there, and that was a conversation between me and her that you weren't there, but what I just said now was a really good retort. And it's just like, so tell her you bought a mirror. It's like, no, not in past tense, just say exactly what I said. I love that being a thing. But lo and behold, let's get to the moment I did not see coming. Was like the reveal of like, all right, who's the voice? I was like wondering what that whole thing was going to be. I was like, what's this all about? Freaking, we got to specify, time traveling Osama bin Laden. I was like, what? Because I was like, right, they brought it up last season. One of the Joshes like screwed things up in that regard, and it's like, and it kind of reiterate what it was. It's like, and we end up finding out the Josh that did it was Nutface Josh, and I love that sadly that's still his name. And it's like, because he was trying to do good and stuff like that, but it's like he basically told this OBL not to go down the path that he did. So he's like, oh, we're friends and everything, and he's talking about this place called Haven and stuff, and then Susan shows up. And I love that whole, also, I forgot, it's like, we are best. He's like, no, stop it. We're B, F. And Josh is like, no, it can't be. And it's just like, dude, you're BFFs with Osama bin Laden. I'm like, dude, this right here, I'm sorry to constantly be comparing other things to other stuff, but this is some Preacher TV show shit where they had Hitler. This is on that same level. It's nuts. I was like, what are you guys doing? This is crazy. But like, it's like very similar to the old Hitler thing in Preacher, where it's like, oh, he might seem a little sympathetic, but then you get the hard turn of like, nah, there's a little more to it. But regardless, I like that Josh was kind of feeling the vibe of the whole situation. But then, like, Susan shows up, and Susan brought up a good point that Josh hadn't brought up yet. Because to me, I immediately thought, like, Josh, you should be asking an important question. He says that him and Nutface Josh are good friends, right? Where's Nutface Josh? Also, if he's so good friends with Nutface Josh, like, why is it that he's stuck in his time? Why does he need you to take him to Haven? Like, those are questions Josh didn't ask. And Susan kind of got him up there to ask those questions about, like, you know, and then, like, you know, how is it that he could hear? How could you hear his voice and everything? Because I was wondering how he immediately jumped to that. Because when Susan figured it out, he's like, I know exactly who it is. It's like, how did you know? I think he explained it, but it still wasn't clear like how he figured it out. But nevertheless, it turns out Osama had cut off Face Josh's ear and basically jerry-rigged some stuff because it's like, oh, they did a lot of time traveling and stuff like that. And basically he was able to communicate with Josh through that. And it was like, oh. And he was trying to be nice and everything. He was like, yeah, but we went to Haven. It was a paradise and everything. But then he invited people that weren't like him and me. And it's like, and Josh was like, and there's the Osama we kind of know. So I even love the whole situation of like Osama was kind of trying to like be like, oh, we can go to Haven and stuff like that. And Josh fires a shot in a random direction. Bing, 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 pow, headshot. I'm like, oh. That's interesting. I kind of would have expected that to go a little longer. I thought he'd be kind of the main antagonist of like, oh, like Osama's running amok and stuff like that. Maybe. But it's like, oh, that's dealt with. And even Tiger immediately coming in and being like, oh, I forgot what was his name. Because Wolf calls him by a different name. What was it like? Sam something Bladden, because it's basically like a jumble, like it's like almost a very similar thing to his own name. And I was like, wait, because it's part of the episode title, and they'd also mentioned the character like once before, and I was like, oh, so that was like your pseudonym in this time and everything. But Susan's like, okay, I'm gonna wipe the record slate clean for all you guys, and you'll be able to you know, do whatever you want to. If you help us get to Haven, because Haven's a despicable place, it's not a good place. Because let's not forget, who's the one that told you Haven was a good place? Right, Osama. So you probably don't want to take his word of advice. Because I also love, like I said, at the same time, like it's still that thing of like, oh, the universe is falling apart because every like times are overlapping, but our characters are kind of going about it like it's nothing. Hell, even Mathers kind of finds out about the big sup by one of her people and doesn't say anything. She's like, does it have anything to do with our future? I don't care. But I'm like, why would you not care? That seems like something that should be, you're kind of time cop, so this should be like up your alley. But it's like, I guess it's like she doesn't care about the big picture like that, regardless of it. I did like the whole situation of obviously Wolf trying to fight the killing machine, getting his ass handed to him. Well, that was mainly because that, you know, ice cream thing like dropped on top of him like that, kind of putting him at a disadvantage. But I love they had that whole conversation about like, oh, what are we going to do about Josh? It's like, well, we'll let him kind of zip back to his, the whole not killing thing. It's like, I mean, Jesus, like how much training do you have to go through? They're like, right. So we'll send him off, you know, whether he's kicking or screaming, we'll chop him off one last time jump for him. And then we'll kind of go decide where we want to go. But it was interesting when Josh suggests, he's like, you know what? Basically wipe my mind, take me back to my parents' place. And I love that they fought him on it, because I was like, what are you guys doing? You literally were going to, because they were going to break up with him, but I think because he wanted to break up with them, that changed everything. I was like, you guys were literally going to drop him off one place and then bounce. Like, so why is it him deciding this is such an issue? But I guess it's also like, at least that way he'd had the memories of them. It's like, oh, that we've been through. But it's also, I think it's a little disheartening to be like, whoa, you're going to erase everything about us like that we've been through? Because for him, it's like, it's been one bad thing after another since you guys got into my life. I'm going to go back to my time, pretend like I didn't even be. I mean, because also you turn to that situation of like, I mean, it didn't get discussed, but let's not forget what timeline he would be returning to. It'd be the 2017 from the end of, I mean, depending on where he wanted to get dropped off. I'd assume he'd want to go back to the point in time like he was going, like the whole Josh situation of 2017, like the douchebag version of himself. You know, he'd have to basically go back and live that timeline. It wouldn't even be his original timeline when you think about it in the grand scheme of things. So that's kind of interesting on its own. They go to like, they follow the coordinates. They end up in Iowa. And it's like, what the hell is it about? And the moment I saw December 31st, I was like, 1999. Why would that? Y2K. Or what was it that Tiger ended up calling it? It was like, was it Y3G or something like that? But I was wondering about like, how that was all going to play out. I love Wolf being like, "Oh, we're following these nerds." You probably would more girls probably would have showed up if you just called it girls or something like that. He was jabbing with them for being nerds. I was like, God, you don't have to tear them down like that, Wolf. Jeez. But they show up, just as like, the Y2K thing happens and they get sucked into Haven and it's such a weird place. And I love when we get there, it's like, oh, who's here? Oh, here's all these people that Nutface Josh had saved. Basically, people like James Dean, Marilyn Monroe, MLK, Jesus Christ himself. All these different people who were going to die before their time. So it's like Nutface Josh trying to do good. And they're all celebrating. I was like, oh my God, Josh, you're back. You're amazing. And obviously, Josh doesn't want to go along with it because he's like, I didn't really do it. This isn't me that took care of all these people. But you have Wolf being like, why don't you just kind of savor it for a little bit? So Josh does. It's like we get a lay of the lands. And the sad thing is, when it was all said and done, I love the whole twist where it's like Wolf kind of didn't fit in, He kind of became, and he talks about it later, he became the loser and Josh actually became super cool. And then we have like freaking Tiger beating the shit out of Gandhi for answers and stuff like that, telling Gandhi, fuck you, breaking his glasses. I was like, that's a super dick move. And then like her being with a goat the entire, we'll get to that in a second. But I also love, one of my favorites is like James Dean performing on the stage and everything, and pretending being Josh. He's like, oh, you can't put a chain on me or muzzle. Some lines from Josh from last season and stuff like that. And he's like kind of pushing it hard, and it's like, oh, which I doubt they did this. It's actually interesting timing. Could you remember there was that movie that was supposed to be coming out where basically they were going to CGI in James Dean? Like, that was a whole thing. Like, I don't know if that movie's still happening or not, but I don't know if that timing is related or not. Probably not. It's just, he's just a very historic, like, particular figure that died young that, so it makes sense. But I love that, like, what was it? Jesus, what was behind Josh being like, I always give him notes about he's pushing it. I always give him notes about that. And it's just like, I got to go. And then Lincoln's like, yeah, I wouldn't blame you either. This is the worst theater experience I've ever had. And Josh kind of looks at him like, really? I'm like, that's dark and fucked up, but I like that joke a lot. Then also him and Marilyn Monroe, it's like, because I love for him being like, yeah, so many people wanting you, thinking you're one thing and you're not. Like, would you even understand? She's like, yeah. And he's like, all right, you're Marilyn Monroe. Of course you'd understand. I was like, oh, that's kind of a nice insight. And they become a couple and everything. I'm like, I thought that was interesting because even Wolf is like, yeah, something's not right about this place. Wait, was Marilyn Monroe hitting on you? He was like, you think so? And but I love the fact is that Wolf is the only one because he kind of seems like the crazy dude that no one, especially as time went on, that like whole thing. I love that whole thing with Lincoln because Lincoln's playing tetherball and stuff like that because Wolf tried to bring him his hat. He's like, oh, that tall hat, that's like, what was it, like a magician's hat? He's like, no, that's not my style or whatever. He's wearing that, but I just love like how douchey Lincoln looked and stuff like that, and how they're kind of playing with that. And obviously Josh's relationship with Marilyn gets complicated. It's like, oh, like you're trying to change me and stuff, but then he comes back and it's James Dean, and then eventually it shifts over to Amelia Earhart, and then it was Jesus. And I love how, like, slowly but surely you start to see that. I thought that was such an interesting thing, like the clock that would constantly never, like, it'd move forward, but then it'd wind back, move forward, wind back, like a second or whatever. But I love that whole thing. Like, I think that was done so nicely, kind of like a time, like not even a time loop thing, just kind of like a place that does exist outside of time and space. So I thought that was such an interesting thing. Then the whole thing with like the dude with the red hoodie, like, all right, that kept happening in the background, but we didn't, like, I figured it had to deal with the, the Y2K thing. I figured it had to be something, but I didn't know how it necessarily fit together. We'll get to there soon enough, but I love the whole situation of that playing out the way it did and Josh kind of breaking down, because for him it's like, holy crap, like figuring out, like, because he's reading through all those journals and realizing, like, because basically the place kind of makes you forget, like, because there's no concept of time, it just kind of like all like fades away. So the only reason why these people have an idea of who they are and what happened to them, it's like because he used Lincoln for example. It's like, oh, you remember how you got here only because you see that picture of Nutface, Josh. If it wasn't for those paintings, you wouldn't be able to know what happened to you. So he painted over it, what was it, no time, no place for Dum Dums or something like that. Welcome to the No Time Dum Dums or something like that. He had painted a picture and stuff like that. They're like, oh, that's not me and stuff like that. I love that we see at least twice where Van Gogh, because like at first when Josh gets here, he's like, this is not good, and Van Gogh's like, and it's like Van Gogh is very, very receptive to, like, he's not very good with criticism and stuff like that. But nevertheless, like I said, you had Wolf being kind of like the crazy conspiracy theorist who's piecing everything to get everything together. He's got like a conspiracy board of just like piecing everything in there. He's trying to remember everything. What was it? He's like, do what like Yoko taught you. Breathe in like now, and that Paul is an asshole or something like that. It was something like that, she said. To Wolf. I love that. I love that they've made that a thing since season 2 where he'll casually drop his experiences over the course, like from when he was back in the 80s and stuff like that. I love that being a thing. But aside from all of that, Tiger having her whole like existential crisis with the goat and everything, even from the beginning I was like, is this actually really happening? Or it's like, oh, maybe there's more to this goat because she's learning from it. She's basically having a therapy session with the goat. Then there's the whole thing with the rocks and everything. She's like, right, it's not, from the outside, it's from within, basically finding peace. And we see her levitate. I'm like, did you unlock some superpowers or something? Did you just turn into Avatar? You turned into Aang from Avatar: The Last Airbender. I was like, what happened there? But it seemed like that was all in her eye because she was focusing on a water raindrop and she was dancing in it. And it's like, wait, what's going on? I'm like, because her whole story was literally the moment she went off with the goat again. She just stayed there for apparently like 10,000 lifetimes or whatever. And it's like, she was over there doing that. And I'm like, okay. And I love what they did where basically Josh and Wolf are trying to figure out like, all right, what's this whole thing about? And they basically switch where Josh became basically Wolf. He's like, no, I was the one that was in command, and he's kind of acting like a dick, and Wolf is the one that's kind of the feeble person that kind of get shit on basically. And I was like, I love that you did that. It's like, we got to find a third. They thought it was Buddy Holliday, and he gets pissed at them because neither one of them is good at what they do because they're trying to find a third, and they find out it's Tiger, but she doesn't remember. It's not till they kidnap their goat because it's her goat, because at first it's like she kept the cube, but she thought it was insignificant because she was supposed to get rid of all material connections and stuff like that, but she still held on to that. She's like, no, fine, you just keep it and put it on the goat. But then the goat gets taken, and then she beats the shit out of Lincoln, and even him being like, I forgot what it was he said. He's like, I remember something, and he was like, and slavery. And then it's like Tiger kind of remembers what she did, being a tracker and everything. And I love that she was able to track them down. And in that moment, having that knife to Josh's neck where he's like, please, please let me live, it all came back to her. I also love that when she was remembering Wolf, she was remembering intimate moments. And it'd be like one intimate special moment, banging. Intimate moment, banging. Intimate moment, banging. And there's just a whole bunch of intimate moments. But I love that they went out of their way to include all the times they did the whole charging session thing, And so it like all pieces together. I even love that before they left, Josh was like, was I really the leader? She's like, yeah, but after everything that you've kind of been through, you kind of deserve to be the leader. You are now, especially after everything that you've been through, because they're about like, trying to figure this whole thing out. But she decides to stay behind, because it's interesting because like she's the one that kind of figures it out, the whole big time thing. I thought that was an interesting thing of like, right, he was like, because in his mind he couldn't remember Osama bin Laden being the one that was, but he remembered being some evil, terrible person, so he substituted Saddam Hussein. And it turns out like, it's like, oh, like but Osama had said like, oh, I went through big time door, and it's like, right, the big time, it's a dude in a red hoodie, it's the dude who started Y2K, the basically Haven and everything. And I like when we go talk to him, because that was a real like, what moment of the show. And I'm like, that's such an interesting lane to kind of go down, especially that late in the season, because that was already like episode 7 at that point in time, to basically explain he's basically where time travel comes from. I was like, what? That's so interesting. So it's not just 100% on Josh and Wolf and Tiger for everything they did last season, the whole jumping 11 seconds, and then their previous 11-second versions, like time traveling all over the place, doing stuff. It's like, it didn't help, but it wasn't just on them. Time travel in general was a terrible thing for the space-time continuum. It was just only a matter of time. It just got there faster because of Josh, Wolf, and Tiger, you know? Because basically that moment, that big time, like, did what he did, and Y2K, it tore a hole in the space-time continuum, and it created Haven. That's Big Time is the one who created, and because of that, because of like that tear in the space-time continuum, time travel was capable, and the hole that's basically sucking everything up gets bigger and bigger with every time there's more and more time travel. So for him, it's like, oh, escape is futile, and once again, just Josh kind of being an asshole to Wolf, and he's about to smack him, but he's like, you know what? It's not your fault. You come up with some good ideas. It's like, and then Wolf is like, oh, like, it's so, like I said, it's so interesting to see Josh kind of be on top dominant wise for once, and, you know, to see Wolf kind of being the very passive one. But I also love the reveal of Tiger where she's like, yeah, it's like the answers were in me the entire time, meaning that you're just a fucking goat. Well, here I am talking to you again, and you were the best thing that ever happened to me. I was like, oh, that's so adorable. But when it's time to go, they all kind of, I even love Josh being like, nah, I'll give you the honor of being the first one through. And it's like, which is even, it adds this complicated thing of like Wolf and Josh being, when they're like, oh, we're friends and stuff like that. It's like, because like from the outside perspective, it's like, it is a friendship. It's just a very fucked up friendship. So it's like, but they go through, and, you know, so does Tiger. And I love the goat being there. Is like, escape is futile, goat. Yeah, you get it. I'm like, I love that whole thing. But basically when they leave, they end up remembering everything. You know, I love Josh being like, wait, did I sleep? He's like, wait, I slept with Marilyn Monroe and Jesus? Because, like, basically, Wolf had talked about the fact is that basically by the time Josh figured everything out, he basically slept with everyone, that being Gandhi, like I said, James Dean, like everyone he had basically tapped at some point in time, or they had tapped him. But Wolf was so pissed because it's like, I was a loser. And Tiger remembered everything with the goat and everything. And it kind of like, it's so crazy to see her kind of be this calm, centered person and not just like the kind of killing machine that she was. But basically this was all about stopping the big sup, because they end up figuring out like if they stop Big Time from ever doing what he's doing during the Y2K, it will basically undo everything else. By erasing time travel, you undo all the damage to the space-time continuum as well. So, and that all being explained, I even love Josh being like, can we really be, we're talking to a guy who was just a game show host, you, Wolf, who was, you know, a former chef turn, you know, former bomb maker and stuff like that, and then, like, you know, look at Tiger as she is now. It's like, and I failed chemistry twice. Should we really be the ones in this position? Because for him, it's like we're literally repeating history of like us trying to save the day and us kind of fucking things up. But, you know, Wolf is like, oh, come on, one more adventure. But obviously for Josh, it's like, I want to just go home, you know, to my parents and stuff like that. Like, I'm tired of all of this, you know? And Susan's giving him that opportunity and everything. So I just thought that was all an interesting element. Like, everyone joining forces at the end like this. I thought that was so interesting the way they handled the whole Susan thing, because I thought he would have been more of an antagonist or maybe kind of manipulative. I am curious at the end of the day what Osama was going to do. Like, would it just been the purpose of like, oh, I'm going to take you back to Haven? I mean, maybe, hey, it's so interesting that he ended up getting kicked out of Haven in the first place. I'm all over the place. I do apologize. I know that's kind of annoying to a lot of people who might be listening to this. I do apologize. But it just makes me remember, like, it's like, oh, like, I remember Osama being like, oh, Josh died in my hands. It's like, yes, because your hands were around his neck. But it made me remember that. But nevertheless, I love Tiger talking to the killing machine, and it's like, it's so interesting to see how because literally confronting the killing machine was basically like confronting herself. And so basically she was able to talk the machine down of like, oh, this is what you were kind of made for. Because she was, I mean, they didn't really deal with it too much this season, but let's not forget she's a biotech, if you want to go by everything in season 2, but it's like they don't really deal with that at all, like her not really being a human and everything. But I guess it's just kind of like, I guess it kind of all fell into like her like existential crisis, and so it just obviously brought even more commonality between her and the robot. And I love that it can sense other stuff like when it was chasing them back in the 1600s to that cabin. It followed Josh's trail, and it was just like tears, 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 tears. But the fact is that it was reading her, and it was like, oh, it seemed like she would be manipulated, but it was like, oh, she's being sincere. And then I love its operation was like fuck, marry, kill, and it was kind of switching back and forth. So like it kind of got messed up, and I even love that it was seeing the goat and everything. So that was that angle. Then Wolf being the badass and trying to like, because for him he's trying to make up for the past, because Tiger has suggested, why don't we try to do everything? Josh, can kind of say he goodbyes and end up, going back to his home, because knowing that you set everything in motion to make sure that everything was done right. And Wolf, because he realized that everything he had done was like, he wanted validation. He wanted to be the one that's like, oh, he wanted to be noticed. It's like, because like even that agreement back in the 1600s, it's like, who were the other people involved? It's like, no, you just wanted to put your name up there. Like, you don't really care about the smaller guy, the weaker people, but now he does, because he shows up, he protects the nerds and everything. I was curious to see what he was going to do with that like giant sports finger. My immediate reaction, this is just me because this show is weird like that, I was like, are you about to like somehow fight the dude by shoving that up his ass or something like that? It's like, oh no, you just did it to kind of wave the big no, and then you shot the dude. I was like, okay. My mind went to like the worst possible way of that playing out, and it's like, oh, that's just a much simpler way of handling that. But like obviously time is all unraveling, everything between Susan and Mathers. I love that whole situation of like, because even like her plan is to basically like, oh, I'm gonna bring this whole series finale to an end by having you participate, and he's like, fuck, that's such a good idea. But I love that. I'm like, you're completely forgetting the fact is the big suck thing happened. I'm sure he had warned you about it, but maybe for her it's like, maybe for her it didn't matter. Maybe once again, like the big suck is supposed to be a myth, so that whole thing to it, I don't know. But regardless, I love that he sends his daughter after Mathers, and she chokes her and just like, okay, honey, she's dead. She's very dead. I mean, this everything beyond this is over. Oh, right. I got you set to that, and it's like normal and kill, and then it's like, oh, it's like it's sweet yet scary yet beautiful, So I thought that was just kind of a neat situation, but I love at the end of the day, like Josh is crossing paths with like nutface Josh, who's bringing everyone aboard, because even Josh was upset because nutface Josh is the one that is the most obsessed with being a hero, because obviously and I like that being a carryover, because at the end of last season, like, I didn't want to do what I had to do because I didn't want to, I want to be the hero, I'm supposed to be J1. I want to be the hero. You tell me I have to sacrifice myself? But what did nutface Josh do? He made sure to go past everyone at the end, be like, oh, I'm saving your life, I'm saving your life, I'm saving your life. So that kind of shows you how full of himself he was, So I just thought that was an interesting element. But at the end, when Josh like is looking at all those rooms, I'm like, is he like, so what is it that Big Time is doing? Is he illegally downloading all these movies? Like, what the hell is that? And it turns out it kind of is. Basically, we find out what started all this is because basically he wanted to be cool and give people like the latest movies and stuff like that. But basically, one of the movies he downloaded, Sliding Doors, ended up having a virus, and so when he gave it to people, like he spread it to everyone's computer. He got the name Big Time because of the whole like tetherball thing, and it's interesting. Like, okay, so it's like, so that's how that correlates. And so it's like he would have been a loser. Like he kind of felt like a loser. And he's like, if people found out I did these viruses, I destroyed their computers, things would be even worse for him. And it's interesting like how it all came full circle, because Josh was like, you can't undo your mistakes, because what was he trying to do? The entire series is undo his mistakes. And he's like, the universe has a funny way of basically using that against you, and like considering everything that he's been through, but also even though Big Time won't recognize it, the whole situation of the whole tetherball thing, he won't understand it, but so it's like the universe has a very sick sense of humor when you try to fix things. So it's like, it's not about trying to fix things, because you can't fix things, because even when you try to fix things, just things end up having worse. And that, to me, like with all jokes aside, that's actually a beautiful message to take away from the show of like, you can't change the past, you can't fix, but what you can do is just basically take this opportunity to better yourself, to say goodbye to the old you and hello to the new you, which is obviously a thing with literally everyone. Tiger went through her existential crisis, and Wolf has become a person where he doesn't just care about himself anymore, that he is caring about other people, and Josh is having this moment of realizing, like, you can't just keep, you have to let go of who you were before and kind of just make today the beginning, make today a new start. So, and he was able to stop, what was Big Time? I'm just going to keep calling him Big Time because I forgot what his real name actually was, but I was able to get him to stop, and I thought that was a beautiful, like I said, there's just a message behind it. And it's like, I forgot to talk about it too, where Wolf was like, their relationship of how, like, she was like a former sister to him and everything, and she's like, yeah, I have complicated feelings for you too, and it's like, yeah, that's such a weird dynamic. And it's like, oh, lo and behold, who's there at the very end? Josh is there, and he's like, yeah, so I guess we're all stuck here in 2000. It's so interesting because at the end of the day, so many things. One, they never switched toes back. The whole, because obviously that's how they found each other in Haven, was the whole Wolf and Tiger situation. Also, Tiger and Wolf and Josh never switched penises. I would have expected that to kind of be something at the end of the day. And it's like, I like that, at the end of it all, though, he's like, I guess it is kind of us together at the end, because he wanted to kind of leave, but these are his friends, this is, his family and everything. So I thought that was kind of a beautiful sentiment. They ended up saving the universe and everything. The sad thing is, when you think about that in the grand scheme of things, it basically undoes everything. It's kind of like a 12 Monkeys thing to a certain extent. It's actually interesting when you think about it. Like, this has a very similar ending to 12 Monkeys, but it's one of those things of, like, when you involve time travel and stuff like that, you kind of undo everything. So that's kind of what you kind of expect things to kind of be. But luckily, they remember everything, which isn't something you can necessarily 100% say every character in 12 Monkeys. I think some of them did, not all of them. That's a whole quote day, but at least this trio remembers, and obviously so does Susan with Randall and Stanley, which is going to be interesting. People from, like, the year 3000, blah blah blah, in the year 2000. You got your, like, robot wife and daughter. It's like, oh, you kind of have a happy ending for yourself. So it's like, oh, that's beautiful in a sense. But also this trio together. It means Cronish didn't die. Completely undoes all that. It just undoes everything. So when you actually think about it in the grand scheme of things, if you want to, we could basically rewind this to basically the beginning of the series. Granted, who knows what that's going to look like, because Cronish might still do his whole thing, and that might lead to the future that Wolf and Tiger came from. But it's like, so it's almost like a timeless thing of, like, everything, like, happened, but now there's no, like, time travel to fix it. It's just like things are going to play out the way they were going to, because their very existence is a paradox. Is when you break it down. I even love the joke of, like, and Josh, literally the entire time, never crossed my mind in the time I was binging season 1 and season 2. Josh brings up the ultimate question: you guys lived in a sewer. How the hell did you send a video game back in time to be a means of finding someone? It's like, well, it's actually quite simple. And they cut away. It's like, I love that, because who cares about the explanation? But it's just funny that it's like, right, a question I didn't think to ask because I'm stupid. They were willing, they threw it out there to be like, oh, here's this question you might have asked. You're not going to get an answer to it. Fuck you. I don't know why. I like that so much. But them being here, in 2000, I thought was kind of, pretty neat. And, the how much time has passed. Like, the fact is that Wolf is taking care of other people. What was it, like a home for wayward nerds or something like that? Essentially, he's become a real life Batman. Him and Blaze are buddies. That's another thing I was thinking that was super sad, because let's not forget that because of that, like, he never met his other wives and child, the whole Lugnut thing. I mean, no, because he met Blaze and Blaze didn't know him. So, like I said, it basically, like, they become the paradox of they get stuck in this time, but every other time travel thing they've done over the course of the series got erased. So even that, so that's kind of sad. He has a memory of it, which it makes this whole time travel thing. That's because that was even, once again, kind of bringing it back to 12 Monkeys. If you did look at 12 Monkeys finale, like, some people are like, you can look at it as kind of happy, or you can be sad. Me being weirdly the optimistic pessimist that I am, I looked at it very optimistically. But now I'm kind of focusing on like, oh, you can actually see kind of like the sad downsides to this whole thing. There's so much good because there's so many people alive again, but at the same time, like so much terrible stuff at the same time too. It's a whole thing. But at least they still have their memories. And but him being, instead of being like Batman, he's kind of, you know, he's got a wolf symbol, wolf's emblem in the air, like being lit up in the sky. Also, he's got his main man Blaze as kind of his Alfred to a certain extent, which is interesting. I like that. And Tiger is spending her time with the killing machine. They're raising goats and stuff like that. So she's kind of finally at peace. She kind of found her balance and everything. So it's just like she's not the killing. I mean, I think that killing aspect of her is still there, but she kind of doesn't need it anymore living in this time. And then Josh is spying on his parents with a young version of himself. And it's like, oh. And they're telling him to get away, you know, and it's like, because sadly that's the closest he'll ever get to is that, you know, his parents, you know, that's the closest he'll see. So he'll probably like pop in every once in a while because that's the only way he's going to ever be able to see them. But once again, it's like you can take this all the way back to the very beginning of the series to kind of give an idea of where Josh's life is, and then maybe it'll turn out different, maybe it'll immediately stay the same. Sad thing is, we'll never get to know like what the Josh we've come to follow, J1, what his life is going to be like in 2000. I mean, you can always take advantage of this, but it's like, what is he going to do? Like, I guess it's just like, live my life, whatever comes, you know, just kind of accepting things as they are, leaving behind who I was. There's no changing anything. Like, he's not going to try and make things better for himself. It's like, no, that Josh's life is going to be what it is. Mine is going to be mine. You know, there's no trying to like, oh, like this is going to happen to you. Like, he could do that, but it undoes all that, the growth that they all going through. So I thought that was kind of a beautiful means, and I still would like to know, like, oh, you'd hope that, but I think at the very least they're all together. So they might be doing their own things, but I think eventually they are a family, they are friends, that they will come back together, you know. So I think that's something nice to kind of keep in mind. I do love the little bit at the end where they're basically making a joke of like, yeah, this is all based on a true story. And they basically have the actors working with the fake versions of themselves. Like Josh is working with quote unquote Josh. Eliza is working. Is Alicia or Eliza? I think, yeah, Eliza is working with quote unquote Tiger and Derek with quote unquote Wolf. I think when you actually look into it, it's even funnier because they go about it in a very fucked up way, because real life Josh, quote unquote real life Josh, is black, and Tiger was Asian. So it's like, it's that thing of like, you kind of look at it, it's like, oh yeah, like it's kind of like a little dig at Hollywood, and like, you know, that thing of like, oh, changing something you didn't have to change. I love that they made it into a bit. So I just thought that was actually kind of a very beautiful, weird way to kind of end off the show, which in turn means that like that breaking the fourth wall by being like, oh, this was a show, we were reacting certain people's life. I just thought it was kind of beautifully done. Like, this is a really good finale, you know. Like I said, when you think about it in the grand scheme, it's beautiful, but at the same time it can be bittersweet when you really think about like all the bad stuff in the grand scheme of things. But hell of a ride. Like I said, I did not expect things to kind of play out the way they did in the grand scheme of things. But I thought, you know, I think it's kind of a nice way to wrap up the series, because even they talked about it. It's like, yeah, this isn't how I thought this would all play out. Like, it sure as hell didn't. The show took many wild twists and turns, and it's crazy to see it, you know, come to an end, which is so weird for me because, like I said, I just binged season 1 and season 2, so to kind of see it just end now, it's just kind of weird. So, but still grateful for the ride, you know. So I'm glad I caught up and, you know, was able to kind of watch this immediately while everything was kind of fresh in my mind. So it feels like I kind of was able to get in that one moment where everything was like one complete package now. So that was pretty dope. So, but as I say with any, you know, thing ending, I wish the cast and crew the best of luck in their future endeavors, which, once again, just because of the whole fourth wall breaking thing of like, oh, this is based on a true story, this is an adaptation of someone else's story, like that whole thing just makes that even funnier, me saying that statement. But nevertheless, I've gone on long enough. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good